Albany man facing a slew of charges, including murder for the death of his roommate. What prosecutors are saying about the evidence they have against him.
Plus, a father walking his kids to school met with a scary situation in Albany. Watch as a car drives towards them on the icy sidewalk.
And the Belmont Stakes coming to Saratoga. As we count down the days, we're getting our first look at the stakes schedule for an historic weekend of horse racing.
CBS 6 News starts now.
Good evening. First here at 5 o'clock, stopping youth violence, the goal of city and community leaders in Albany.
This after two teens charged in serious crimes involving guns and crack cocaine just weeks apart. The youngest charged, a 13-year-old boy. Tonight, I sit down one-on-one with the police chief to hear directly from him about what the cause of this youth violence is and further, the solution. Police cars and caution tape. Not an uncommon scene around the city of Albany, but what community members say is new cause for concern is how the violence is now impacting the youth.
And when you add a gun to a volatile mix, sadly, we are seeing the consequence of that in our community.
Just this month, a 13-year-old boy charged in connection to two shootings in the city, and a 17-year-old charged after being found with a loaded pistol and crack cocaine in a separate incident. All of the violence taking a toll on the teens trying to stay on the right track. Teens like Brianna.
Life is short, and it's not good to choose violence because violence leads to bigger things like people dying, and it's not easy to see people die, you know. It takes a toll on us teenagers in different ways, you know. Sometimes we see other people die and we just like, wow, like that could really be somebody close to us. So it makes us reflect on our life.
Faces of frustration taking to the streets, trying to reach people where they are to promote peace.
We don't tolerate the gun violence.
So we went to Albany's top cop, Police Chief Eric Hawkins, to try and get some answers. As police chief, how hard is this for you to see, and what is your reaction to young people out in the community behaving this way?
Well, it's distressing to see young people engage in these sorts of activities, but we know that there's some things that can be done as a community to deal with some of these things, and and it starts before we arrest these young people. Our youthful offenders a lot of times turn into adult offenders, and so it's important for us to try to address the behavior at young ages so that they don't engage in some even more heinous acts of violence once they become older.
The chief says past unresolved trauma is a factor in some of the youth violence we're seeing, and that addressing it is one solution.
Some of these youthful offenders, they've been victims of, or they've experienced or witnessed unspeakable acts of violence at young ages. So we've got to do a better job of helping our young people deal with this trauma.
Saying teaming up with invested community partners is the way to make that happen. Places like the Boys and Girls Club of the Capital area holding weekly teen nights like this one to give area youth like Brianna a positive way to spend their downtime.
Being here is better than being outside, you know. It's better than being, around a whole bunch of people who don't care about their life.
And places like Bridge the Gap Community Resource and Outreach, the community safe space offering youth mentorship, violence prevention methods, and a neutral ground where kids can just be kids.
Here we want to just open our doors for a community to be able to just exist, just to be in response to violence.
But all of it only works if the message is heard by those who need it most.
If there is a child out there who might be going down the wrong path, who stops to watch this report, what do you want to say to them to convince them to stop the violence and play a more active role in bettering their life and the community as well?
As a community, to do as much as we can to provide these young people with some of these resources and this information so we can save their lives and potentially save someone else's.
Now, the chief also says the more involved community members can be, the better when it comes to tackling crime. For more information about community resources and ways you can help, visit this story at cbs6albany.com. Well, turning now to weather as we take a look outside tonight. It was a bit of a messy day today with some leftover snow, ice, and rain all kind of mixing together out there.
That's a live look right here. It's Schenectady, 35 degrees, and it is wet and dreary, but hey, there's still some light out there, so that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Here's the chief, Steve LaPointe. Hi, Steve.
Well, look at you, Greg, looking at the positive silver lining there. Yes, there is a little bit of light, so we've got some good visibility.
All right, Steve, thanks. Tonight, Troy police investigating two separate shots fired incidents. First, around 6:15 this morning at Jackson Street and First Street. Then again before 11, shots fired at 3rd and Jefferson Street. Right now, it's unclear if the two are connected. In both cases, no victims were found and any suspects ran off before police arrived. Again, an investigation is underway. Abortion rights will be on the ballot here in New York this November. Governor Kathy Hochul reminding voters of that today while voicing her continued support for abortion rights. CBS 6's Ashley Kusakonki reports from Albany.
On Wednesday, more than...
Well, a pretty scary situation on an Albany sidewalk this morning. Take a look at this.
Andrew Neidhart sharing this on Twitter. As he walked his children to school, a car heads towards them on the sidewalk. This was near the corner of Lark and Washington at the Washington Avenue Armory. You could even see the icy sidewalk causing the car to slide. Andrew says this isn't the first time he's seen a car on the sidewalk in this area. We've reached out to Albany police to see if they've had other reports and have not yet heard back.
Hard to imagine any scenario in which it's okay to drive your car on a sidewalk.
Yeah, scary situation there for sure.
So we'll check that one out, that's for sure.
All right, well, still to come, presidential candidate Nikki Haley says she's not going anywhere.
That's right, a look at what the map and the math tells us about her odds after losing in New Hampshire.
And coming up in sports, NYRA has announced the stakes schedule for the 2024 Belmont Stakes Racing Festival at the Saratoga Racecourse. All you need to know after the break. Presidential candidate Nikki Haley says she's staying in the Republican primary even after losing by double digits to former President Trump in New Hampshire last night.
Haley's home state of South Carolina is a competitive primary, but that isn't for another month. And as national correspondent Atre Alnashar reports, it's unclear if her campaign will make it that long.
Period for potential snowstorm and then drier weather for Tuesday and Wednesday.
Just what we want to hear when you settle down for dinner. Rainy and murky.
Yeah, I think I will be indoors again.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that in January, that's for sure. Sports coming up next with our first look at the stakes schedule for Belmont weekend in Saratoga.
First, here's a look at what's coming up at 5:30. It's been 10 months since the first bus of migrants came to the capital region. We take a look at how many are still awaiting work authorization.
Coming up, a look at the issue Americans are placing ahead of healthcare, education, and the national debt as they pick their candidates for 2024.
And the Monahan murder trial wrapping up late yesterday with a guilty verdict handed down for Kevin Monahan. We break down some of the last-minute motions the defense tried to file in today's What Are Your Rights segment.
Sports. Guys, back to you.
AJ's pumped and it's still months away.
Yeah,
gotta like it.
It will be here before we know it.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, we're still a few days away, though, from tax season.
What the FTC wants you to know about scams this year.
CBS 6 News starts now.
First at 5:30, your top stories and your weather headlines. Here's what you need to know.
Community resources like the Boys and Girls Club of Albany are trying to help police address issues at the root of youth violent crime, such as trauma or not having ways to spend downtime.
NYRA releasing the 2024 Belmont Stakes schedule for its historic running at Saratoga this year. The Belmont will be on June 8th. It'll have a purse of $2 million. The weekend's overall $10 million purse will be the highest in Belmont history. Hundreds gathering today in Albany for a Planned Parenthood Day of Action. Governor Hochul warns that abortion rights will be on the ballot this November. And a bill introduced in the state assembly would require a fetal heartbeat test before performing an abortion. It's not likely to pass in the Democrat-controlled legislature. In-depth coverage on all of these stories online. Just head to CBS6Albany.com. Well, it's been 10 months since the first bus of migrants came to the capital region. Since then, we've seen a call for support from nonprofits and local lawmakers made to the federal government. One of those requests, a faster work authorization process. CBS 6's Emma Quinn reports on how many are still waiting to apply for jobs nearly a year after arriving in the U.S.
After nearly a year...
As Americans decide who to vote for this November, crime and drugs are emerging as a top issue.
It's beating out some big topics. Here's our national correspondent Kayla Gaskins with more.
A CVS.
The U.S. government reports a record 21.3 million Americans signed up for Affordable Care Act coverage for 2024. That's an increase of nearly 5 million people from last year. Notably, about a quarter of people choosing plans for this year were new consumers. Several states, including many led by Republicans, saw massive jumps. The bump in signups come as the landmark health care reform law's future once again becomes a presidential campaign talking point. Former President Trump, who's running for the GOP nomination, has revived his promise to repeal it. The American Lung Association is calling on the White House to finalize rules to end sales of menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars in the U.S. The association's annual State of Tobacco Control report states tobacco remains the leading cause of preventable death and disease in the country. University of Michigan researchers say banning menthol cigarettes would save an estimated 654,000 lives over the next 40 years, especially among marginalized communities. In October, the FDA issued final rules to the White House for review. The final menthol rule is set to be given in March.
All right, coming up next here at 5:30, expert legal analysis on some of the final moments in the murder trial of Kevin Monahan.
And today's What Are Your Rights? We look at some last-minute efforts from the defense.
Also, if you're sick of shoveling snow and looking to switch over to a snow blower, in today's Consumer Reports, we take a look at which ones are the best for keeping your driveway clear.
And for those looking for booster seats, we take a look at the top-rated ones to keep your kids safe.
So as the first count, murder in the second degree, how does the jury find the defendant, Kevin Monahan, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
That moment there is when Kevin Monahan knew his fate was sealed. A jury delivering a guilty verdict on charges of murder, reckless endangerment, and tampering with evidence for the shooting death of 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis in Monahan's driveway. Monahan will be sentenced in March. That murder charge will put Monahan behind bars for up to 25 years, which could be a life sentence for the 66-year-old. It was a case watched with great interest here in the Capital Region and nationally, too.
Getting legal analysis on some key points from the trial, CBS 6's Lara Bryn sat down with Paul Harding of Harding Mazzotti for this week's What Are Your Rights segment.
The following segment.
And you'll also find our in-depth coverage of the Monahan trial. Use your smartphone camera to scan the QR code on your screen and head right to that page of our website. Daily recounting of court proceedings and background on the case available at cbs6albany.com.
For Tuesday and Wednesday.
So you got to stay inside until Tuesday and Wednesday after you watch that
I'll
chart.
see what I can do about that.
Right. You got to eat. You got to get out, right? All right. Coming up all new at 6 tonight on CBS 6, a birthday surprise to remember.
How an East Greenbush man had decades of questions answered and the sweet moment he met his half-siblings. It's a story that is positively upstate.
If you are tired of clearing snow the old-fashioned way, a snowblower can help and even minimize sore muscles.
In tonight's Consumer Report, CBS 6's Lara Bryn has some of the top picks and tips to help you clear snow quickly.
And if you're shopping for a child booster seat to put in your vehicle, there is some good news. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety analyzes seats and says nearly all of those recently tested are actually top rated.
Tests are done to make sure the belt fits correctly for a typical 4 to 8-year-old. Safety experts say a good booster places the belt at the center of the shoulder. The IIHS says children buckled up in booster seats are 45% less likely to be injured in a crash compared to those using seat belts alone.
It's not riding up on the neck or falling off the shoulder, and the lap belt is low across the hips, really on the upper thighs, not riding up into the belly. 47 of the 54 boosters we rated received our top rating of best bet, and none of them were not recommended. Whether it's cross country or just going down the neighborhood, we need to make sure kids are buckled up on every trip.
Parents should make sure the seat works in their vehicle. Look for inspection stations from your local police department where instructors demonstrate how to properly install a car seat. Well, comedian Jon Stewart is making an election year comeback to The Daily Show.
A lot of people are excited about this one, and he's going to be back as the executive producer through the election cycle and host the program every Monday night starting in February. Stewart led the political satire show for 16 years and has not had a permanent host since Trevor Noah left last year. A lot of Jon Stewart fans out there.
Oh, yeah.
They'll be excited.
Definitely.
All right, still to come here tonight, addressing youth violence in Albany, a need highlighted by recent arrests.
I sit down with Albany's top cop and hear how some local resource groups are stepping in.